We keep on talking about our topics, and we are discussing motion, in fact. So our next topic will be absolute and relative motion. So when we talk about absolute and relative motion, we'll discuss Newton and his critics. Well, we get a lot when we talk about the critics of Newton. Rather than talking about Newton, we also talk about critics, and in fact we learn a lot by the critics. And next topic will be the grounds for absolute motion, and then we'll move on to Newman's theory. Well, Newman's theory will be taken along with that of Strain's theory, and with these theories we'll move on to Macaulay's theory. So we'll talk about Newman's theory, we'll talk about Strain's theory, we'll talk about Macaulay's theory, and then we'll talk about absolute rotation is still a change of relation. We keep on talking about Mach's reply to Newton because we've been talking about the critics, we've been talking about the protagonist, and we'll talk about the antagonist as we move in our topics in motion. Then we'll talk about Hertz dynamics, and in fact we'll provide you a summary of Hertz system of dynamics. Then we'll talk about Hertz innovations which are not fundamental from point of view of pure mathematics. Then we'll talk about the principles common to Hertz and Newton. In fact, we'll draw a comparison between both of them. And then we'll talk about the principle of equality of cause and effect, a very important one, in fact. And then we'll move on to the next topic, which is called logical and arithmetical doctrines of Frege. We'll talk about principal points in Frege's doctrines. We'll move on to talk about meaning and indication, and then we will move on to truth values and judgment. We'll also discuss the criticism on such a doctrine, and we'll also discuss are assumptions proper names for the true or false. Next we'll move on to the functions of the same, and then we'll talk about Begriff and Gegenstand. So after a discussion on Begriff and Gegenstand, we'll start talking about recapitulation of theory of propositional functions, and then we move ahead to can concept be made logical subjects, and then we'll move ahead to the ranges, talk about ranges. Our next discussion will be that of definition of relation, and then we'll move ahead to reasons for an extensional view of classes, and then we'll talk about a class which has only one member is distinct from its only member.